think that can come down now. And just get my water organised. It's quite warm here already, so don't expect too much in the way of energy. Okay, just check everything is right. We've got Mick fired up. So, if you don't know me already, I'm Grant. I produce and host The Bird Emergency, and over this period of time where everyone's on holidays, we're going to run through some of the popular episodes from way back in the archives. Today, talking to Mick Callan. Spoke to Mick. I can't ever remember if this was prior to how far before lockdown it was, but I'll just do the countdown so I know where to edit this out, and then I'll do a more formal introduction. So let's go. G'day bird nerds, I'm Grant. I'm the producer and host of The Bird Emergency. Today we're replaying and I'll be here live. I'm here to talk to you if you want to talk, comment, answer questions. But this will be the first episode, the first conversation that I had with Mick Callan, who is a graduate from Charles Sturt University, did a master's, and part of his master's project was developing what you can see behind me, which is the now called Habitat Innovation, the business that he's started up. But that's an artificial nest box, and that's a white-throated tree creeper about to jump into it. And they've been very, very popular. But this episode is me talking to Mick about all the work that went into getting the design right, the testing, thermoregulation and moisture within the hollow was something that really was a concern for Mick, and he solved a lot of those issues. So yeah, we go over that. Now tomorrow at the same time, I'm going to play the episode where Mick updated, and it was a year or so later that we spoke, so maybe a little bit longer, and Mick updated where they had gone to, the changes in the business, and yeah, outlining what a success his boxes, or where's the best spot to sit? I want to sit this side so that you can see the bird. Yeah, so that's tomorrow. But if you got any questions, certainly pop them up. And if you're new, just use the chat or the comments on whatever platform you're on. If you're watching on the live page on the Bird Emergency, birdemergency.com, you can select Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch as your platform of choice, and then you can do the interactions with the comments. If you are just watching on the birdemergency.com, it's a little bit more difficult. It's just there so that you can find what's going on, really, and then go out to another platform. Anyway, that's enough of banter. Let's just show one thing. These are the things that if you want to... People ask me often, how can I support the show? That's the easiest way. no matter what platform you're on, to like and subscribe. YouTube particularly helps me out with on unlocking some new features. And we can't forget Buy Me a Coffee. So there's the link there, buymeacoffee.com/birdemergency. I think I've also set up a link for the birdemergency.com/coffee. If I haven't, I will do it later today. I'm pretty sure I did. Okay, that's enough of me, but I will be here. So if you do want to have a chinwag, well, there we go. Let's get past Grant and past Mick up. And if I think there's something that needs comment, I will do so. Let me take that banner down just before we get started. About that, we'll take that one down and we'll put this one up so that people come in and they'll know what's going on. And let's enjoy. I was delighted to bring to you one of the practical workers, the academics, or the good old volunteers putting the sweat. God, I can saving the endangered birds of the planet. And for those international listeners, I'm sorry, it's Australia again. It's Australia again. Today we're speaking with Mick Callan, who's a director of Habitat Australia, and we're going to talk about the crisis in the availability of nesting hollows for birds, but also the other critters that require them. And Mick is joining me from Bathurst in regional New South Wales. So we're going to just be a little bit patient with Malcolm Turnbull's internet. Thanks, Malcolm. And we'll take it from there. Mick, thanks for joining me. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks, Grant. Pleasure to be with you.
Well, Mick, we were just discussing before I pressed the go button that I spoke to you, it's probably coming up on 12 months ago, or perhaps even more, about nest boxes and how artificial hollows could perhaps be encouraged to get out there with municipal bodies. And we were talking about corporate sponsorship and things like that way back then. Since then, you've done a good bit of research, a project that hasn't yet been published, but that we can talk about today. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you got interested in the hollows and some of the work that you had previously done with regional or any of the metropolitan municipal councils? And for the overseas listeners, that's our most local form of government. That's the people who are looking after our local parks, mowing our nature strips and collecting our garbage.
Yeah, I guess as a bit of background, I was working from about, I think around 2015 for a group of 19 councils out in the central west of New South Wales. So across a huge area, those 19 local government areas covered in the order of 120,000 square kilometres. And we got funding to do a project where we were sort of at the forefront of the chainsaw hollows, where we got arborists or tree doctors, as people commonly refer to them, to actually cut hollows into standing trees, which over the last sort of 5 or 6 years has become a little bit more commonplace, but at the time was very new and quite radical. And that really was the thing that piqued my interest in hollows and got me learning more about how the situation is for hollow-dependent fauna. And that sort of pushed me towards getting back to uni and doing a research project.
And what was... No, let me start that question again. what did you think what you needed to find out to further the work that you could do to be more productive's the wrong word, but to be let's use the buzzword productive in the broader landscape with hollows.
Yeah, it was obvious we did that project that there were a lot of people coming to us and saying, "You guys done hundreds of these. You sort of at the front of the pack what have you found?" And at the time, we didn't have any research associated with it. It was very much results driven based on the funding was get the money, do the work, tick the box, which is unfortunate. But from that, we lined up a PhD student out of UTS, Rhiannon Honey, who's now wrapping up her PhD on those chainsaw hollows and just found some really interesting stuff around thermal properties and species use. So I think in the end we had over 20 species using those chainsaw hollows, nearly all of them native. There are a couple of exotics. But yeah, it really made it clear to me that if you're wanting to do something new and different, you need to actually have a bit of theory and research behind it, the sort of replicable stuff that people can take on board and go, this isn't just anecdotal, it's proof. So that was for me.
Yep. Mick, I think we're having terrible audio coming through from your end. Do you know where the wireless hub is near you? Like, can you see
no
it?
idea.
Is it no? All right, we'll just persevere. I just hope we can.
Would it be better if I tried on the phone?
Probably not, because that's much harder for me at this end to get it to sound right. Hopefully, the way StreamYard works, it's recording you and recording me, and then pushing it out. So hopefully, when it downloads you, it's just getting you speaking to your computer and me speaking to my microphone. So we'll just press on, and I just have to be listening very hard. Let me get back in the mud. So Mick, what's basically the difference between the, shall we say, the uptake that you've been able to work out between the birds that use the chainsaw hollows and the birds that are using your nesting boxes? And have you trialed lots and lots of designs for the nesting boxes?
Yeah, the nesting boxes has been a slow journey. I started with an idea a few years ago now where I thought if we could make a timber nest box that was insulated in an outer casing, it could help with the thermal properties, but it could also help with the longevity. So initially, I was playing around with timber octagons that I'd put together that inserted into PVC pipe, and then was using 3D printed fittings on those as entrances and pushed the duct to fit onto the PVC pipe. And all the research that I did really led from that. So we went through a lot of iterations of the nest boxes with 3D printing. We used 3D printed components through to full 3D printed units that we field trialed a couple of iterations of those. And then what we moved towards was 3D printed nest boxes with double walls that then had timber inserts inside. So effectively they're a triple walled nest box, but they're very lightweight and very durable. So they should, in theory, last a very long time in the field.
Now, the PVC pipe, outer casing, and then the octagon of timber on the inside. Tell me a couple of things about that. What are the species that you targeted with that design? And do you have to be really choosy about the timber? Because a number of people have said to me that we can't use recycled timbers or old timbers because of the treatments that might have been used on the timbers. So tell me about how you had to go about selection, and I'm really interested in what size that design was and what species have been using it.
Yeah, that was pretty easy for me because I'd pulled an old compost bin and a fence at home, and they were all old hardwood planks that were untreated. So that was really simple reuse of old hardwood timber that otherwise probably would have been burnt or gone to landfill. Initially, I was using 150 diameter PVC pipe, which resulted in about a 110 mil internal diameter, which is really quite small. So probably suited to pardalotes and pygmy possums and things like that. But we also did a bit of playing around with 300 mil pipe, which allowed us to put out much larger diameter. So it was about 250 mil internal. We got to do some thermal trials on those over sort of the winter period. And then we lost all of those hollows in the large bushfires the other sort of 12, 18 months ago before we got to do any real monitoring work. So unfortunately, species use on that was very limited. We've got some anecdotal stuff of species checking them out, but outside of the breeding season. So the exciting thing was we saw feather-tailed gliders and brown tree creepers and all sorts of things checking them out. We don't have any confirmed breeding data from those boxes.
So it's something that we're finding a lot, that a lot of research has been lost as a result of the fires, and then hasn't been able to be continued during the COVID lockdown. So having lost your PVC pipe and timber insert test boxes, how did you come up with the idea to use 3D printing? Because I know that was sort of the next step. Now, that to me seems like it would be really, really expensive. So tell me what led you down that path, and what do you think the future use and take up on a wide scale with municipal bodies and other conservation bodies could possibly be with those boxes?
Yeah, this is, I was really fortunate I was doing the graduate certificate of ornithology at CSU at the time. And I was talking to Dave Watson, the professor down there, and said, look, I've got this idea. I'm wanting to do some research and hoping that you might be able to take me on. And he got pretty excited about it. But from the very start, he said to me, there's a lot of people doing things with nest boxes and trying to make them better and improve the thermal properties. But everyone seems to be kind of playing around at the edges with the idea that we start with the timber nest box and work to improve that. His approach was go back to the drawing board. Tell me what we need for threatened species to use these things, and then let's develop that with the best way we can do it. And 3D printing came as a pretty obvious choice because we could use lightweight materials and we could really shape any sorts of shapes we wanted. So we were able to create round shapes. We were able to create sort of ladders, if you like, all built into the printing process, into the design, using 3D printing. So in my previous work that I'd been doing with local government, I had some good connection with some engineers, and including one who had moved over from local government to CSU to work in their engineering school. And I knew they had some 3D printers available in the lab there. It was a little bit complex to get some work happening across departments in a university, but we got there, and that's really where it all led from, and we're able to put out some pretty interesting prototypes early days. And then I ended up investing in my own 3D printers just to keep things moving along a bit and get some bigger sizes. But I would say initially I went in with the idea that 3D printing could be a really great way of getting heaps of people making nest boxes at home to be used in the field. And then the more I delved into that area, I realised that the process is so slow and tedious to make anything of a sufficient size, and also really expensive. Plastics that are available for home 3D printers really aren't suitable for putting in the field for any long-term periods. It was really great prototyping by going about things, but in terms of production, just not practical at all, unfortunately.
Now you were saying home 3D printing. Do you think that having discounted that idea that everyone can go out and spend $500 on a printer and then get the materials and print their own nest box, you've dispensed that idea, but what about industrial scale printing that maybe each city might have one or two of those kind of printers, or maybe, I mean, what's the one that you invested in? Is that something that you would be continuing to make your own nest boxes to put out in the field, or would you be looking at a heftier, gruntier model?
Yeah, we still have about, I think at the last count we had 7 3D printers of various sizes, but we're really using them only for prototyping and making sure that our ideas on the computer as we see them. I'm an ecologist. I'm very tactile and hands-on. I work with a really great engineer here, and he's great at design and can tell me everything works. But for me, having something on the screen doesn't translate having it in your hand and getting it to go. That's not quite as I envisaged or what I wanted. And in terms of cost, we had one nest box, a full-scale nest box, in it was nylon, a really hard plastic. And it cost us over $5,000. So
one box,
one nest box. Yeah.
Oh, well,
so this is why we've invested in getting Habitech set up, and we're moving towards injection molding for commercial production.
Okay, well that was kind of my next question. I wasn't going to really limit it to injection molding, but whether you had looked at other industrial processes that could give you an acceptable design. And I mean, we need to have a number of different sizes available to be able to get to cover any sort of landscape in any meaningful form. So have you done any rough figures on what a comparable injection molding outer case would cost, and then the cost of the timber?
Yeah, we're actually going through the process at the moment. So we've invested a lot of money. We've got all our tooling happening at the moment for that injection molding process, and we're looking to hit the market early new financial year with boxes retailing with the timber inserts. So a 250mm internal, 400mm high nest box will be around the $200 mark. And completely modular, so we can make multiple units. It can be 200 high or 4, 6, 8. We've got different sized entrances, and we can restrict the entrances with the timber, so they'll be able to be configured to a whole range of different species.
the the thing that people always tell me, Mick, when I talk about nest boxes, because anyone who's ever followed the show and chatted to me on Twitter or whatever knows that it's something I've always had a bee in my bonnet about. Years ago, I worked for Bunnings, and I used to despair at the amount of timber that after every shift was put into skips and was then out and then got put into a truck and went to landfill. And that happened every shift. And I was in one store, and Bunnings has got God knows how many stores. So I've always been thinking there has got to be a way to stop this material going to landfill. I also, around the same time, I worked in irrigation, and I worked for a company that supplied pipe to building sites, basically to the companies who put irrigation into new estates. So again, seeing the offcuts of pipe being either putting in the skip to go to landfill, or the usual thing that the builders were doing would put it in a pile or in a 44-gallon drum and burn them. And I was thinking, God, so there's only a couple of pipe manufacturers and distributors in the country. There's 3 main ones. So surely there's a program where they're delivering stuff to these sites every day. Surely we can work out a way to pick up the offcuts and, if not recycle them, send them to somebody like you, or I've always thought the men's sheds should be able to use them with a design, the standard design, and get them out in the landscape. But I don't know. That's almost going to be my life's crusade, Mick, if I can get it going. The funny thing is, the companies are really interested in doing something good if they can, but the disconnect seems to be that nobody seems to agree what a good nest box is, and that seems to be where I get into trouble. Whenever I speak to someone, they go, "Well, you've got to monitor them." So, okay, you've got to monitor them. You've either got to work it into the work program of a local council, or you then have to put the gadgetry in to do the remote monitoring, which adds God knows how much to the price. Which I understand, but it just seems like, well, before we follow that thread, the start of the paper that you sent me goes into how quickly hollows are being reduced in the landscape. Now that's staggering. Tell us about that, and then tell us about why, even though we're having lots of revegetation projects out there, tell us why we're not replacing hollows. And even as the trees age, the way we're revegetating means we can't possibly get the amount of hollows, even in 40, 50, 60 years, that we are losing. Explain to us why that is.
Yeah, look, it's a global problem, but sadly in Australia, and particularly where I am in New South Wales, we're actually top 10 in the world in terms of land clearing at the moment. And it's generally, the majority of it's being done legally under current legislation. So that's quite scary in itself. But the biggest issue with land clearing in relation to tree hollows is it's typically the old large trees in the landscape that are preferentially cleared, and they're the ones that contain the tree hollows. There's a bit of debate, a bit of movement in the literature around how long it takes to form a tree hollow, but I think it's well established that at the absolute earliest, from a tree either as a seedling growing naturally in the field or being planted, you're looking at a bare minimum of 80 years, more like 100, and probably getting closer to 150 for anything of any reasonable size. Then you start looking towards some of our big owls and cockatoos and brush-tailed possums and the gliders, those sorts of species. You're out to hundreds of years before a tree has a hollow of that sort of size. And then the other issue is with increasing wildfires. Wildfire or bushfires in Australia, they have a double effect. Trees that actually have hollows are more likely to burn, and we lose that resource. But they also have the positive benefit that they can create hollows in trees that don't have existing hollows. So catch-22 there. But the biggest issue with what we do now is when we're clearing land, and if we're having offsets put in, those offsets are generally trees being planted now. So we're hundreds of years away from replacing hollows. And then the way that we revegetate is often really close plantings, lots of stems per hectare. And so you get trees growing up nice and straight and tall. And it takes a lot longer for those trees to form hollows because it's the big old paddock trees with the branches that go sideways and lean out, where the branches are more likely to snap off and create the hollows. So trees that are growing up big and tall, they're losing all those lower limbs earlier on in their life, and they're not retaining them to big limbs. So it takes even longer again in those sorts of replantings for hollows to form.
Yeah, that was the thing that really stood out to me in the paper you sent me, that the density of the revegetation is in fact perpetuating the problem. So we've got the time lag that it takes, as you say. Let's say best case 80 years or 100 years, but then if you've got the density stems per hectare that consistently in all the revegetation works that are being done, it's just too close, that it's going to actually mean that most of those revegetation projects have to senesce before we're going to get any hollows, which could push it, way past and reduce the number of trees that are likely to form hollows anyway. So the poor old critters and the birds can't win the way we're currently doing it. So we either stop clearing or we change the way that we revegetate. But if revegetation is being undertaken with an agroforestry mindset, nobody is going to reduce the density of the stems, of the eucalypt stems that they're putting in. So nest boxes are the only way.
Yeah, at the moment that's the case, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that they're not appropriate for particularly threatened birds. Mammals have great uptake of nest boxes, and I have a theory about that. Most of the mammals will actually create a bit of a den or a nest, and they have their own fur. They're not as subjected to the thermal fluctuations as birds are because of that, because they'll often line the box and create their own insulation in there. So common species do really well in nest boxes, and in Australia, for my mind, I think common species are becoming less common and need all the help they can get in terms of the hollow uses. But things like the superb parrot and the polypellis species, there's a lot of our threatened bird species that there's really no evidence of them using nest boxes, and I think a big part of that probably relates to thermal properties and also the design of getting those shapes right. Microbats are very similar. The amount of information we know of what sort of hollows they use is so limited that by putting up a nest box, you're really only guessing as to what their needs are in many cases.
Well, let's look for a ray of hope, Mick. How cooperative is the research and the sharing of knowledge between all the different interested bodies and the academics and the practical conservationists who are working with hollows? how cooperative, how much information sharing is going on?
I can only speak from my experience, but for me, people have been extraordinarily generous with their information and knowledge and research. So I've found that to be a really positive thing. I think it's the way forward. Everyone in this industry is wanting good outcomes, and so no one's really protecting their research too much. They give up a bit of information respectfully on the understanding that it's not distributed beyond what they're doing. But it's been really collegiate. I've been pleasantly surprised by that.
Where do you think you have to go next with your research to make boxes cost effective? And when habitat is a bit further down the track, who are you going to be looking to provide boxes to? And let's draw it out even further. Are you going to try and keep refining them to target the species who are in decline, whose populations are in decline, rather than let's call them boxes, not nest boxes, that might be used by common mammals?
Yeah, so a few points in there. Touched on, I think, initially, one of the big issues with timber nest boxes is they have and people will argue this, but generally it's sort of understood that a good timber nest box will last about 10 years. And there's plenty of evidence where people have constructed beautiful nest boxes that are maintained and will last 20 or 30 years, but they're certainly the exception. When we started down this path, one of the big things that was obvious was that a lot of nest boxes are put up as offsets for land clearing, whether that's road construction or mining or agriculture or urban expansion. And those nest boxes are generally put up as a tick the box, walk away. No one's ever going back to maintain or monitor those. And within 10 years, you've got nest boxes falling out of the trees, and you're still at least 90 years away from any re-veg plantings developing hollows. So you may have at best artificially kept populations sustained for a decade, but then you crash to really back to the 0 point of no hollows in that area.
Now, I wasn't aware that, sorry, Mick, I wasn't aware that putting up any old nest box was able to be included in offsets. That's staggering to me. That just seems like a really, really easy out that either a local government or a state government has taken. Who, in your experience, who's responsible for that? If there isn't enough research out there that says this is actually an effective way of maintaining a population, who's allowed that to be a standard way of gaining offsets?
Yeah, look, it's often a condition of consent that hollows that are cleared are replaced, nest boxes replace them, and it's often at an increased number of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 to 1 hollow.
But if they don't work, that's pointless. That's like saying, sorry, I wrecked your car, mate. Here's 5 bicycles in exchange. That's dumb.
Yeah, so that was part of what we were looking at when we were really aiming to make a long-lasting nest box. So for those big organisations that put up a box and walk away, so if we can keep some habitat in the landscape for decades rather than 10 years, that's hopefully a win, and getting the thermal properties right was the other key thing for us. And one of the other things with timber nest boxes is, and in terms of who we're targeting, it is those big ones that are walk away, because we know that people that love birds and want to put up nest boxes around their property, they're more likely to maintain them and replace them when they fail and keep that resource turning over. So they're not so much the market for us as the big mobs that are happy to put up boxes and walk away, and hopefully we've got a solution for them that can last a lot longer and be a lot more effective.
So we talked about local councils, but let's, without identifying anyone, Mick, you don't have to do that, but who are the organisations, the big ones, as you said, who would be taking up your nest boxes when the development and it is done and they're out there and you're producing them in bulk? Is it the sort of companies who are doing mining re-veg and land repair? Is it Greening Australia? Is it Landcare Australia? Who do you see as being the main clients for Habitat?
At the moment, we've been having conversations, very positive conversations, with a whole range of people from some large mines, and energy companies, some local government agencies, and some state government organisations as well. So quite a broad range across, at this stage, across a large part of Eastern Australia.
So let's again, looking for a ray of light, Mick. How far off having something available for those potential clients that you think will be serviceable for, say, 20, 30 years in the landscape, that are going to actually be used by the species that we're in danger of losing? How far off do you think we are in being able to produce those varied size nest boxes?
Yeah, we'll be, from all the advice we've received from our manufacturer, we'll be putting units out retail in the first quarter of 21-22 financial year. So not far away, hopefully a few short months.
Okay, well, let's see how good you know your potential price list. If we're looking at hollows for, we've just put out today the episode on glossy black cockatoos on Kangaroo Island. So for a bird the size of a glossy, what kind of price? What? Let's use a better word. What's the investment that a landowner or a authority would need to make in a one nesting location for a bird the size of a black cockatoo?
That's a great question. We're not quite. We won't be manufacturing anything suitable for glossies at this stage. Our first production units will be 250 mil internal, which is the square glossies. They're probably looking at more like 350 thereabouts, I'd expect. So
you're looking more at the superb parrot kind of size, is that right?
Yeah, correct.
A medium parrot.
Yeah, so the medium to larger parrots that, and there's a reason we've done that, is because it's been shown that the bigger your nest box is, when you're talking timber nest boxes, the less their lifespan, because the weight on the joints increases too much. So
yep.
Once we get in, that's why we've gone into those sort of bigger sizes. But of course, we can restrict the internals as well. So at this stage, there's a whole host of species that we believe we can target, and we'll be looking at a standard unit, which will be 250 internal by 400 height, will be retailing for $200.
Okay, and that you're looking at a life of what, 30, 40 years for one of those?
We'd certainly hope so. We've worked for a long time with the manufacturer and plastics guys to get the right material. So we're looking at super hard glass fibre reinforced plastics, and they're more expensive. They're UV stable, but the thing is, we sat in an office with these guys and had a mental ruler, and because we were really worried about birds chewing these plastics, and we sat there and just whacked this plastic for about a minute, just bang, 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 and we couldn't even keep a bit of plastic off it. So we're really surprised by that, but that's what we're using for all our entrances and any potential chew points.
Well, that sounds like a very cost-effective, if you're annualising the price, very cost-effective way to preserve endangered species, and even just stopping the decline of common species in the landscape. If we, here's a problem that I see, is that we don't actually value any species in the landscape. I reckon if we were in some way in a budget of an authority, state, federal, local government, that you could value a pair of superb parrots at $1,000 a year, well, they'd be going, oh well, we better put up a lot of nest boxes, and you say if you lose a pair, we're going to debit your state grant by $8,000. I don't know. Just thinking laterally, well, then all of a sudden people would be doing things. Mick, I did ask a little bit about the idea of monitoring. How many people have said to you, but we need to be able to monitor these things, otherwise you're just going to be filled up with Indian miners. Is that something that you're coming across?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a very reasonable and fair point, particularly with our boxes that are quite new. People want to see results. They want to know what's using them, and it depends what sort of monitoring you want. I think when you talk nest box monitoring, for the sort of work I've done with the research, I ended up with over 1 million photographs to process of things coming in and out of boxes and tree hollows. And that takes an incredible amount of time just to go through, even though you just click. Anyone that's worked with remote sensing cameras and processing that volume of data would well understand it's pretty burdensome. But I think for most people, going and checking nest boxes probably annually is enough, depending on whether you're targeting birds or mammals. Just making sure that they're in good nick, that they don't need repair or replacement, and to check them for exotic species. And that's a really important factor, that once you've got exotics in an area and they're breeding up, so I see it a lot around here, particularly in the peri-urban areas with starlings and Indian miners, that once they get a hold, they're so competitive with those hollows that their numbers increase exponentially, and they really drive out the rest of the hollow users.
Sounds like Daniella's method with the audio moth might be able to be used on a much broader scale than she's been doing so far, because monitoring is probably 4 or 5 times more expensive than the nest box.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. And the other thing is, the installation can often be as expensive, more expensive than the nest box itself. So it's been a big problem with nest boxes over a long period, that more broadly with a lot of environmental stuff. So tree planting is the same. You can easily get a grant to go and put trees in the ground or to put nest boxes in a tree, but no one wants to fund the follow-up maintenance and monitoring of those. So once the boxes are picked and walk away, the funding body's happy, and who knows what's happened in 2 or 3 years, whether you've actually had a good positive environmental outcome or not, if that monitoring and maintenance isn't in place. So I think that's really looking part of where money is in the environment at the moment. But having said that, the money that is available is so limited, it's not surprising that the funding bodies want those green kicks and be able to move on rather than sort of the things that might be a little less exciting for their audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, this is where corporate Australia we need to find willing partners, and for them to commit beyond a 1-year program or a 2-year program. I think that's the challenge ahead for all of us. Mick, what's your very next step that you've got in the next 6 to 12 months that you've got to undertake?
Well, we'll be retailing, as I said, from sort of July, August, all going well. But we've also got some other trials underway that are happening where we're just continuing to work with our brackets, and we're getting some hugely positive data coming back on their bracket design, which is pretty unique. We've developed a bracket that our boxes sit on that the tree actually grows over the bracket so that it can't fail once that's happened. So yeah, essentially the nest box is where the bracket is consumed by the tree, so that there's no failure point there, and it's normally the critical point where the boxes will fail. So we've got some work to come out of that, but it's looking very positive. And we've got some other work we're doing around substrates and the actual bedding material that's put into nest boxes, and we've got some really interesting data on that as well that's showing that it's absolutely critical that what you've got in the base of a nest box can contribute to the microclimate, at least as importantly as what your insulating materials are.
Can we draw that out a little bit, Mick? Because the conventional thing that I've always thought, I mean, and looking up everything about building your own nest box and putting them up in a tree, and you want your rosellas to come in or whatever, there's always just been a couple of handfuls of sawdust in the bottom. Tell us what people should be using.
Well, it's complicated in that in a timber nest box, you don't necessarily want high humidity because it will greatly reduce the lifespan of your box. So that becomes problematic. But with all the monitoring we've done with natural hollows, they maintain a very high and constant level of humidity, and that's really needed for particularly birds with eggs. They need that high humidity for the eggs to hatch successfully, or preferred at least. So it's just another benefit that we came across with using plastic in the construction of our boxes, because we can put some substrates in there that really hold that humidity level at quite a high point. And then we've found subsequently that it also helps regulate temperature. So our boxes without any bedding material in them fluctuated much more widely than boxes that had bedding material inside. So pretty important finding.
So what bedding material were you using, Mick?
For a lot of our trials, I sourced for my honours thesis. I sourced some what I would call mud guts, so the decomposed timber, heartwood timber mud guts from inside tree hollows. So I know a local arborist here who had to remove dangerous trees, and he was able to supply me with a few big tubs of that. And so we used that during laboratory trials, and it was really surprising, the results that came back, really interesting. And that's what we've been doing over the last sort of 12 or 18 months, is trying to replicate what substrates we can put in that aren't taking that natural material from the environment, because it's not readily available, but how we can replicate that sort of decomposed timber, hardwood timber, and something that's more readily available to just pop into nest boxes and get them installed.
Yeah, that would be very, very hard to get on a production level quantity, wouldn't it? So, um, would one of the commercial compost products perhaps work in a similar way?
Yeah, we're looking at a bit of a blend at the moment, which is showing some really good results with the combination that we're using with a mixture of some coarse material and some fines and then some medium material. And it, at least visually, will appear to be a really good sort of substrate for the birds, particularly or mammals, to get in there and actually lay a nest on, make those things.
Okay, so what are you undertaking any formal research now, or is it all sort of in-house company research, or is there actually an academic program that's continuing on?
A little of both. We're doing a lot of trials sort of in-house at the moment, but we're also, Carl, who is the business partner, the other director in Habitech, he's a pretty prolific publisher, and we're wanting to get some of these results published on the track once we sort of get more formalised with the way we're going together.
Who are the journals or the publications who are going to publish nestbox studies?
Good question. I'll be leaning on Dave Watson a little bit for advice there. So, got one paper that you've had a look at that I'm still refining and hoping to get out for publication quite soon. And then there's a few others in the wings. So, yeah, watch this space. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, and I'll be banging the drum pretty loudly once, if we get them accepted.
Okay, well, we've talked an awful lot about your work, but let's just talk a little bit about your experience, Mick. How'd you get to be such a bird nerd?
All started with an aviary back in Murchison in central Victoria when I was about 10 years old, and my sister and I started breeding budgies. We were very fortunate to grow up on the Goulburn River down there in Victoria, and around some beautiful bird life. And yeah, it was really the catalyst for me to get interested in birds was breeding budgies in the backyard and understanding the genetic combinations and all of that sort of thing, and understanding what birds like and don't like. And yeah, really my interest in birds stemmed from there.
And did you graduate from budgies to Burke parrots, or was budgies it, and then you moved past aviculture?
Yeah, I did. I actually moved from budgies to Burke parrots. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
I didn't know that, but I kept Burkes as a kid. So yeah.
Yeah, I loved the Burkes, and I loved the fact that I could keep them with finches. And the Burkes was about they were as big as I was willing to go keeping birds in captivity. So yeah, I really enjoyed those. But yeah, I've not kept birds for a lot of years. I've been much more involved in actively setting them in the field rather than keeping them in captivity for quite a long time now.
Yeah, I think there's a point where you go. Certainly for me, where I went out to my aviary and I looked and I thought, huh. And I look up at the sky and I think, hang on, why have I got these in here? So yeah, I just decided that bird keeping was not, unless it was a particularly conservation focused endeavor. I didn't see how it sort of meshed with my my love of going out with my binoculars and watching birds in the trees. I thought, yeah. Did you have a sort of hallelujah moment like that?
Not particularly, but yeah, I think there's some valuable lessons that come from aviculture, and particularly with the sort of work I'm interested in. I think that we can learn a lot from the guys and girls that have been breeding birds in captivity for a long time. It doesn't always translate to the field, but there's certainly, you see some birds kept in appalling conditions, which really turns me off the idea of it, to be honest.
Yeah, and certainly I don't want to get the hate mail. I'm not against aviculture. I just
No.
I think it's a perfectly acceptable hobby, but I certainly think there's some birds that we should not be keeping, and but that's
Yeah.
a whole different issue. Favorite bird, Mick?
Oh, I get asked this a lot, and I never have a good answer. I do have a soft spot for the budgies, being the bird that got me in.
I'm going to break there for just a minute. Let's take this out of the stream for a sec. I'm going to break there just because the next bit is all the bird emergency questions, and I'll just rewind that a little bit on here so that we can get those in one hit. But what I've got, I just want to show you, is a couple of videos that Mick gave me, and the greater gliders using the box. So I'll just run those, and then we might sort of do some Q&A. Oh, this is the sugar gliders, beg your pardon. Sugar glider family. And there's another one. Can you see the bundle of leaf litter in the tail? Well, not leaf litter, leaves. Yeah, so I might also show you. You might not have made this out while I was showing them in the... now, that's the head of a greater glider. Yeah, so greater glider, very interested. And then these ones, I think they're either, I think they were feather tails. I can't remember exactly what Mick had told me they were, but just give you an idea. And I hope you noticed galahs on the double size. So that's with one outlet open to allow the galah in. That's a really early prototype before the modular system had developed with an Eastern Rosella. And of course, one of my favourites, the white-throated tree creeper. So all these just go to show how much the hollows are in demand. So I'll get Mick back, and thanks for the love, Sue and Naomi on Facebook there. That's great. So I'll get Mick back and do a 2023 update, but tomorrow will be the 2022 update. Now, I want to hold the bird emergency questions off because I'm going to do a compilation of all of the shows that I run this week and next week into one more. So I'll tell you what we're going to do tomorrow is I've got an episode where I spoke to Mick. Must have been 18 months or more down the track from this conversation, and Mick talks more about the processes of, turning the idea into a company and then getting the stuff out into getting the boxes or the hollows. I'm moving away from calling them boxes because they don't look like boxes, do they? And we'll run that, and then so that'll be Wednesday, right? Yes, and then Thursday I'll run one of the panels where I had Mick on, I think with Holly and maybe with Dan Fuller from Plants Grow Here. I can't remember if Dan was in this one or not, but we talked more about using a hollow or a Habitat box in the garden, specifically how to site it, things like that. So too many hollows are barely enough, right? And I think it's in tomorrow's one. Mick and I work out how many hollows are required in Australia alone, and the numbers are mind-boggling. So let's see. Do you want to ask anything? Good idea. A good time to maybe think about telling me what you might like me to ask Mick as we when we get him back live. Oh, look what I've put up there, by the way, too. I'll give you a hint what that would be useful for. Put it back up there again. At the moment, I'm limited to only being able to re-upload for this, so that I'm limited with what I can do. So just even sort of at $20 or $40 a month makes it possible for me to do some extra stuff. So Naomi, that's really great. I'm glad you lashed out and did that. So tomorrow's one is more about development and the marketing, and a bit more about the science, and then the one which will be Thursday will be far more about using the boxes and being a bit more generic about boxes in the garden. And then I have spoken to Mick, and he has agreed to come back in the new year. I don't know exactly when that will be, but obviously I'll keep you abreast of it. Now, Sue, if you're still with us, have you got anything you particularly want to find out? Naomi, certainly the idea, the substrate will be something I've made a note of it here to put on my list to ask him, because of course I forget. And Waffle. Okay, so have any councils in WA made use of mixed? I'm not sure if any of the councils have, but I'm pretty sure some of the recovery teams are testing them out. I'll put that. I'm putting that on the list right now. Making sure I put your name next to it. I'll send Mick an email and with a whole bunch of things that I know we want to talk about, so that he can look into it. Tell me, while we're being social, what have been your wildlife or bird highlights of the holidays / summer so far? And Sue, how hot did it get yesterday over in WA? I'll just wait. Well, we'll see what happens. I want to run that little video again. I really love those glider. Where are we? Oh, it's in that tab. So it was only how's the how is it today, Sue? I mean, we've got 37, 38 here in Melbourne, but I think we're getting cool again tomorrow. So have you stayed cool? Where's that little video? I want to run that video again. I love the sugar gliders. Let's have another look at them. It's good. I can keep talking while that's running. I love that they're just checking it out. They haven't made up their mind in this one. Yeah, we'll have a look. Oh, there's another one just arrived. Did you just see that? And then here, they obviously decided this'll do. This'll do. I might put the call out to see if people have got some footage that we can show when we do the next, not tomorrow's one, but the next time I've got Mick on. So, well, that's pretty much all I've got for today. Oh, hang on, Naomi. Okay, great. What have we got? Naomi, thank you for that. I am looking at the moment at a couple of things. A Patreon, which I will highlight with. I'll focus more on. Well, it'll be two. There'll probably be two levels. There'll be a level for bird nerds who want bird content. There'll be a level for habitat gardening, and there'll be a level for both. And I will be doing a lot of getting people in only for the Patreon, and it will also be, I'm going to run a membership on Buy Me a Coffee as well, because they've upgraded, and I'm working on a page for the website to support the show. So let me tell you, the best thing for me at the moment for supporting the show is sharing and liking. So not only just liking the stuff that I put out on the different platforms that you might see it on, but is sharing it so that people who aren't in my world get it. The people that are in your world, yeah. Now let me stop there. Sue, thank you for that. I don't use Coffee or Ko-Fi just because I really found out about Buy Me a Coffee first, and a whole lot of the podcasts that I listened to were using it. I have the option ticked. When you buy me a coffee, you pay the fee. Okay, so if you decide $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, you will pay the transaction processing fee. I figured it didn't make much sense having small amounts where I pay the fee and then I still pay the tax because I've got to declare it, obviously, as declared income. So there isn't a way for me at the moment to do anything tax deductible, and I'm not seeing that in the future. But I'm hoping, and look, it's really encouraging. Do you want to let me know? Do you want to know some of the things about the growth of the show and the YouTube in the last year? Are you interested in that, the ins and outs of a duck's bum, as I like to call it? If you are, we will. I'll pull up some of the numbers. If you're not, I won't. Just give it a minute or two for that. Okay. Naomi's interested. Sue's interested. Okay, well, I've got my... so So I think I started the show. Let me just get my stats up. When did I? Let me just check. I think February 2020 was the first month of the bird emergency. So if I go to, I think we'll just say February 1. And if I go to February 2020, and I go to the end of the month, which was 29, and I run that, I had 0 downloads in February of 2020. If I go to, hang on. Bear with me. I know this is boring watching me do that. Let's do the first quarter. So February 2020 through to the end of March 2020. Yes. So for that quarter, there were 67 downloads. Okay. Let's go to the same quarter in 2021. Oops. 2021. So that would be the... I will take it to 1st of January because that would be better, wouldn't it? 2021. And we'll take that to the 3rd of March. The end of March, beg your pardon, 2021. So we went from 67 to 723. This is podcast only. And let's turn that to 2022. January the 1st to March the 31st, 2022. So that's 723. That went to 1690. And if we say, where were we at the end of... we'll just go back to the start. And if we take that to the end of 2021, we'll make that the end of December 2021. So until the end of December 2021, from the very beginning of the bird emergency, there were 10,054 downloads. So that's pretty good. If we take it to today... so 10,564, 26,247 in the space of a year. That's great. So there we go. Sue, I wasn't watching, so let's see what you were saying. Yeah, it's really difficult, Sue. It's really difficult to know because everyone uses a different platform. Now, I've got the website, which I think I want to try and centralise more on that. Now, you've got here, obviously, YouTube membership fees deducted by YouTube are pretty high. Now, I would use YouTube membership in a heartbeat, but you need 500 subscribers to unlock that. And that also gives me better options for back and forward. I think Facebook have got something as well. And I'm happy to do things that... that suit the people who are consuming the show. So I'm happy to be led by any of that. Patreon seems to be, yeah, yeah. So yeah, YouTube takes 30%, but but combined with the fact that, I mean, you're watching me on Facebook, but you know, I've got people checking out the Bird Emergency on YouTube all the time. YouTube is by far the easiest place for me to get reach, particularly since Twitter has just gone to the dogs. I mean, I'm no longer being surfaced on to most of the people who follow me on Twitter, let alone to new people. Mastodon is turning out to be great in terms of downloads. Mastodon's giving me far more downloads whenever I repost an archive episode, like I did for Daniela yesterday. Now that in the last 3 days, Mastodon alone has been 100 downloads of the podcast each day. And we've got to understand that they're different audiences. Like you guys aren't on, you're not watching me on YouTube, right? So it's totally different, and the content needs to be different. I've got no doubt. I've got no doubt, Sue, that will be what will happen. But bearing in mind too, I'm looking at having a membership on Ko-fi or Patreon. The first level might be $5, but my YouTube membership might be $15, and there might be a lot more stuff that goes into it. I'm also looking to do, and actually you guys can tell me whether you think this is a good idea, for the habitat gardening. I mean, what I want to do is have, with every sort of episode, a free download list of some of the plants that we talk about, but then a comprehensive list which you actually have to pay for. Because if you came to the nursery and had a one-on-one with me at the nursery, you only get that for free if you buy plants, basically. So there's the trade-off there. But if you wanted to have a consultation with me and I would go to your garden and talk to you about plants, that would cost you a couple of $100. So getting a compromise of a reasonable list of things that I don't just pull them out of a book. I actually check that they're currently available, and if people tell me where they're from, for instance, Sue, if you told me that you were in Wanneroo or say you were in the Goldfields or something, and you let me know that, well, I might find, and also I stratify them too. So you've got your ground covers and your tufty plants and your small shrubs and your medium shrubs and your structure plants. And so I think about it rather than what can you buy, more about what can you use, and more importantly, what can the wildlife use. So I'm thinking about a whole lot of ways to get to more people, and I'm not telling them how they have to do it. And the beautiful thing about what we're doing, like, you know, that I did that interview with Mick about 3 years ago. Now, more of you watched it today, and more people have listened to the episode than did in the 12 months following doing it. So, yeah. So I mean, I think if you've been following me long enough, you know that where I come from in terms of doing the content, the first thing is helping the birds and helping the people who are helping the birds. And then when I branch out into doing the Photography Friday and the Tour Guide Thursday, it's about selecting places that people who think similarly to me and to you would go, you know, if it was tours. Well, obviously, I want you to go on a tour with Janine Duffy rather than bloody those cruises that are exploiting wildlife, rather than assisting wildlife. I take the same approach with the photography stuff. I want people to learn how to use their cameras and then become advocates for wildlife through what they do, and learn, not from me, because I'm a rank beginner with this thing. I'm an absolute rank beginner. But, people like Nicholas and Sandy and the other people that I've got lined up are to share knowledge, help people understand their gear, help people understand techniques that don't upset wildlife, and then we can talk about all the great things about sharing. And if people are taking photographs of birds, animals, plants, be it whatever, that you don't already know about, well, it broadens the whole horizon. So, and if I can make a living out of it, that's what I'm hoping for. And all this stuff, the bit about sharing too, becomes really important, because I'm looking for sponsorship, and so that I can take the whole thing on the road, so that instead of me sitting here in the $1 million studio, I can go out with Mick, and I can film Mick doing stuff, and I can talk to the landowner, and we can put an episode together. And this is where YouTube will become far more important in delivering different content rather than just the Zoom stuff. I don't want to do what everyone else is just doing. I've been doing this for 3 years the same way. So I want to change it up, and I want to give more value to everybody that's in the community. And I want to, it's becoming a community. And I thank you guys. You guys, is it bad that I keep saying guys? That's just me, old. Yeah. So that's where it's kind of coming from. And I was really about to launch into doing the Bird Nerd trivia, but the platform that I was using was becoming a pain for the guy who ran it, and he's now rejigging it to do it a different way. So all my Bird Nerd trivia is down at the moment, but it will come back, and that will be another thing where there'll be an entry fee to get into it. And I'm at the stage now. I think the whole bird emergency thing is getting big enough now where I think publishers will send me books to review that I can then give away as a prize. Hopefully I can do something with Mick where I can do a package where maybe the annual prize, if we do rounds for the, actually have like a tournament for the trivia, well then maybe the biggest prize is a cocky size or a powerful owl size habitat nest box. So there's a whole lot of things I want to try and do, but you need to get to a stage, to a size where people care about you, and I'm only just getting there. I mean, I think in the last month there's been 3,000 downloads of the podcast in the last month. And most of that growth is on Mastodon, and most of those people are people who had never seen me before in Twitter. And now on Twitter, I've spent years cultivating, that's nearly 5 years, or it is 5 years, I think, to get to nearly 3,000 followers. But now most of the active followers have gone. I mean, Twitter's just a dumpster fire. And Naomi and Sue, I'm going to be doing more on Facebook. Now, I've ignored Facebook for the whole time. I just post there because I can do it while I'm doing something else. But I'm going to move away from that, and then we'll see what happens. I'm going to do more collaborations with people who have always supported me with the show, and to support them, people like Ricky Coghlan, and maybe we will do bird ID tips and, take some of the ID questions that go into a Facebook group. Maybe I might take that expertise, take some of that expertise onto the birdemergency.com. Takes a lot of time to do all this stuff, but Sue, I appreciate that. It certainly helps me if you subscribe on YouTube and share on YouTube and stuff like that. Once I get to the 500, then the next goal is to get to 1,000. I'll tell you what else you can do, and this is for everyone. If you want to help me, I need to get monetized so that I can get into the partner program on YouTube. You need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in a 12-month period. Sue, I just got the notification. Thank you. Now, if you're like me and you've got two monitors, just open up one of the past live streams of the Bird Emergency and run it in the background, and that will get me hours up. That's the hardest thing. Now, it's really difficult. This is part of the thing too. My processing power is on the computers I've got. Just means that for me to do a video takes all day. It means the processing takes all day, which means I can't do something else, which means I can't do an interview with someone or I can't work on the website or whatever. So I will be doing a crowdfunding in probably kicking off in about 10 days to raise a couple of grand to buy a new laptop that fits in with the workflow and that I can then use to go mobile. I want everything to be able to be mobile. There we go. There we go. Yeah, thanks for that, Naomi. It's really helpful, and it's the kind of thing that most of us do nowadays, right? I play J-pop going all the time while I'm doing other stuff. Well, I'm not going to keep. Well, I am actually rewatching my old things now, but I'm going to keep doing this as well, going back to some of the old ones where, like, I want to do Rob Davis next week, and we'll do Steph, and maybe we'll do the Curlews, do a run with the Curlews, and some of the ones I reckon are really, really great that I don't think enough people have heard or listened to. And this is a fun way of doing it, isn't it? Where I can interact and we can all talk about it, and I can give you updates if I know updates, and so yeah. So that's what we're going to be doing. When the crowdfunding is up and going, and of course, the best thing that people can do when that's up, apart from throw in a few bucks, is to share it far and wide, because I'm probably going to need 100 people to contribute something. It's probably closer to 200 people. I ran a poll on Twitter. Would people consider supporting a crowdfunding? And it was 75% said yes and 25% said no. And it was a really small sample size, so I don't know what that means. But now that I've got the base, I'll probably go back to one Bird Emergency episode proper, like Bird Emergency Hard Bird Science, once a fortnight, and probably a bonus episode which is a bit more ornithology adjacent, far more habitat stuff, and like updates with past guests, and they would be bonuses, and probably do one of those every week if I can keep up with it. And then all the other stuff, because I'll be interviewing nearly every day, somebody every day, and that will go behind a paywall before it comes out to the norm, out to the general public, because nearly everyone I interview is on 50, 60, 80, 200,000 a year, and I'm on. I'm ashamed to talk about how much I don't make. I mean, I live on nearly nothing, and that's not poor me. That's my choice, because I want a small life, but it does mean that it's difficult for me to. Well, it's difficult for me to upgrade and things like that. And if I upgrade, I could do more. So it's that kind of thing. And I think I'm big enough now that there's enough people have been exposed to the show. And I think people have decided whether they like me or not. And that's good. So there we go. There's all the updates. Thanks, Sue. What I'd like to do, I'm hoping that I'm actually about to do a course for the next 6 months, which is teaching English as a foreign language, right? And the plan then is to take the bird emergency to the countries that I can teach English in, and that I can deliver some value with my horticulture / permaculture ideas, and interview people that I would never really usually be able to get to, simply because they don't have the technology to talk to me. So many of the people that I want to talk to have worse internet than Mick did. So it's difficult to do this, but I can take a recorder, I can take the camera, I can take the laptop, and I can produce the stuff and then upload it when I stay in a hotel for, that's my plan, to go and stay in a hotel once a week to upload everything. At the other times it will be, backpacking. And I'm looking to get sponsorship to take an e-bike with all the gear, portable gear, around to places in Australia, but also international, because I live the life, and the low carbon birding thing is something that I want to promote. Sri Lanka's where Nicholas has been. I would like to go to Sri Lanka, but I wouldn't be going there. There needs to be some economic and political things settled down before I would risk going there. I think you'd be far more likely to be a hostage or something nowadays. I'm probably likely, Naomi, to be starting in Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, although Indonesia again is maybe not on the list these days. Laos, Cambodia, Philippines, certainly visiting. It's much more difficult to get work in the Philippines as a tutor. Korea, Japan. I mean, that's more than enough to keep me busy for a couple of years just looking at those, and then depending on what the access to money is, doing holidays to places where I maybe can't, set myself up to do a 6-month or 12-month contract to work, but that I can go and visit places. So, so there we go. That's a lot more than I expected to talk about today, but that's sort of where I see it going. I'm in the fortunate position that a lot of people aren't. I have no dependents. I have no significant other at the moment. So I don't need to, I just don't have to go, I can't do that. I would love it if the rest of my life is going places to interview people about birds take videos and photos and sound recordings of people about birds, help people in make really good decisions about land use and planting, and just do that for the rest of my life. I would be quite happy with that, being able to keep doing content, but doing stuff. And now that the pandemic's over, I can do it. Get this course out of the way, get this year, use this year as a set the foundations to go and do it. And I want to go and meet Greta Thunberg, and I want to go and interview people like, I'd like to meet Mary Colwell in person, and maybe instead of talking about bycatch and the benefits of the hook pod with seabirds, maybe get out on a boat, on a trawler, and watch the difference it makes. And if I do it as just part of my life, I don't need to find $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to do a little project that produces, 5 videos or something like that. So I just want to see what's possible. So anyway, it's always great catching up with you, Naomi, and Sue, and do we have anyone? There's people watching who aren't commenting, so I don't know who they are, but it's nice to have you on board, Twitch folk and YouTube folk as well. And look, if you've got any suggestions or you've got any things that you want me to cover, I'm always down for it. And the other thing that people can do to help me out, if there's projects that you know about, it's not possible to know about everything, especially when you're creating content as much as I am. Let me know about things that you think I should be covering. And I'm going to do some things like, we're going to have bird call competitions and things like that. But I need to get some prizes and things like that to make it, worthwhile to bill it as a competition. And I'll be moving sort of, I think Twitter will be more like a billboard rather than an interactive place for me. So we'll probably be doing more interactivity on Facebook and Instagram and Mastodon. Thanks, Naomi. I always enjoy it when you and Mon when she's here, and Deb, is she? Just to keep things rolling. So Fabo, gee, can you believe it? We're almost to 2 hours again. I cannot believe it. Great. It's always fab, and I'll trim this one up. I'll take the back end of the show off and the front end of the show off, and we'll upload this as a video so that people can take 40 minutes rather than 2 hours of it, and maybe people will watch it on YouTube. But yeah, again, thanks. I really enjoy it. It's great chatting with you. Midday tomorrow again. So that notification, I think, is already out there on the different platforms. And Sue, I'll start using the community tab a bit more if I know that people are looking out for it on YouTube. So, yeah, great. Thanks. Hooroo.